So, welcome everyone. I'm Zolita Grant, and I'm so excited to have you here at our Unleash Your Brilliance Summit. This is a real dream of mine to bring information to ordinary people that will help them find the brilliance that we all have inside. This is designed to bring you tools, techniques to inspire you and to have strategies to create brilliance. Our guest today is Matt Hall. Matt is a Guinness World Record holder, a serial entrepreneur, the host of top charted podcast Success School, and an online business strategist. Matt appeared in all 10 episodes of E4's reality TV show Love Triangle and is known for his contributions as a lunchmate panelist on Channel 4's Step Pack Lunch, a show he was in for 18 months. Matt set up his podcast, which is also now an online membership success school, back in 2019 to create a real movement to help enlighten and empower people to live their very best lives professionally and personally. Matt is helping people not only realize their full potential, but build their self-esteem and their confidence, and to give them action steps to support, guide them, enable them to go out in the world and achieve the things they want by having an online business. So, Matt, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to share this space today and hopefully not just inspire people that are watching, but genuinely give them some actionable tips, steps, strategy that they can take forth straight after they've listened to this and genuinely make a change in their life. So thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, that's our basic goal. And you can find all of Matt's contact information in our speaker portal. And I encourage you to check out his podcast. I'm definitely going to subscribe.
Thank
So,
you.
so Matt, your life and your work are really an example of the brilliance that you found inside of yourself. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how you help other people to also find their own brilliance.
I love what you've said there about how we all have that brilliance within us. And it just made me think there that a lot of us have it, but we don't believe we have it. And I think that is the crucial thing. It's about recognizing all the beliefs that we have about ourselves, about the world, about life, about the industry that we might be in, and recognizing which of these beliefs do not serve that brilliance that we have within us. And I know that sounds really simplistic and basic, but at a fundamental level, I'm a true believer that that is one of the biggest things that does hold people back from stepping into that brilliance. And I know for me, I spent years naturally being super ambitious, working really, really hard. But I know that it led me to a place of sort of just being busy and not really having clarity or strategy. And that led me to have limiting beliefs about maybe I can't be successful, maybe success isn't for people like me. And I sort of really questioned everything and felt like I'd gone down the wrong path, chasing success and ambition. And that's what led me then to start researching and learning and actually becoming quite obsessed with like positive psychology and high performance mindset and really learning about this stuff. And that's when I recognize it does just come back to this. What we tell ourselves up here plays a huge part in what we go on to have, do, be, or not. So now for me, it's about helping other people from that journey that I've been on. I've been in business 15 years this year. I've been working as a coach for I think about 6, 7 years now. And from all this experience, and predominantly a lot of the mistakes that I've made, I'm just really passionate now about helping other people and sharing those lessons so that they can recognize where they've maybe got beliefs holding them back and start to make changes and start to recognize their brilliance. Because I do completely agree with what you're saying. We've all got that brilliance within us.
You brought up a point that I think is so important to really enhance, and it's the whole idea that many people have a dream or a vision, but their self-doubt is what
Mm,
limits them.
yeah.
And it sounds like you too suffered from self-doubt. So would you mind going into that a little bit and how you turned it around?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the best examples of a cycle, a strategy, a method that really helped me recognize the power of beliefs and self doubt is something that Tony Robbins shares called the success cycle. I'm sure some of your listeners may be familiar with it, others may not. But for me, the first time that I discovered this and heard Tony speak about it, it blew my mind. And I'll just simplify it for people listening today. But Tony basically says that the success cycle helps us understand where everybody is in their life right now. So he describes it as saying, once you understand this, you'll understand why the rich get richer, why people that are confident seemingly stay confident. He said it's a simple 4-step process. And if anybody wants to write this down or make a note, the 4 steps are simply beliefs, potential, action, and results. They're the 4 steps. And the key thing that really stuck with me was when I realized that our actual potential in this life is not based on our actual potential, right? So I think a great example is when we look at a newborn baby. If you was to say, how much potential does this baby have in the world? Most of us would say all the potential in the world. Like it's a little baby. Who knows what that baby could go on to become? And then a lot of us forget that we were that baby. You know, we are that baby just a few years later, right?
Mhm.
And I think the thing there to recognize is before we have these experiences where we build beliefs and, you know, start to build an identity around ourselves, we'd all agree we have all the potential in the world. But our potential is not based on our actual potential. It's based on what we believe is our potential. And that for me was like the gold because I recognize, again, coming back to this 4-step process, you know, what you believe about your potential will then inform the type of action you take. And the type of action you take will inform the sort of results you get. So if we have low beliefs, like people like me can never be successful, or I'm no good with money, or I'm a shy person, if we have these low limiting beliefs, and these self doubts, ultimately, like you're saying, we're going to take low limited action. When we take low limited action, we're going to get small or no results. And then this was the key thing because it's a cycle, it's going on and on and on. The results we get or don't get then will either reinforce the beliefs or change the beliefs. And that's why it's this cycle because then you go, well, I've not achieved anything. So then it goes back to the beliefs. Told you so. I told you that I was no good and I couldn't do this. So what I really started to recognize is there's 2 key things that we have control over, and they're interlinked, and that is thoughts, our beliefs, and actions, what we do. And when we can start to be more self-aware of those 2 points, what are we thinking? What's the story we're telling ourselves about ourselves? And what's the actions we're doing? When we become more aware, I always say self-development starts with self-awareness. When we're aware of the beliefs that are not serving us, the behaviors and actions that are not serving us, we can then actively work towards shifting and changing them, which then will change results. So it's kind of a quite a long, in-depth thing. I tried to keep that succinct, but hopefully there's things for some people that, like it was for me, the first time I heard that, I started to go, do you know what? That's really simple, but it's so true and it's so powerful.
It is. And, you know, when you talk about that formula, it brings me to the concept that I have of mindset. That mindset is like a channel that you put your mind into, and it
Nice.
has all of these different elements.
Yeah. Yeah. My mindset is, you know, a lot of what I do now is teach people business strategy. And in particular, I help people with online businesses. But for years, I've taught the mindset stuff and done more of the kind of general life coaching with people. And what I find is strategy doesn't actually mean anything without the mindset. You can be given the simple steps. And I think you can apply this to most things. I teach business, right? But if you've got a coach that teaches fitness, you
Right.
know, how to lose body fat or how to get healthier or stronger, there's going to be simple steps. And they are usually simple. You know, let's think of fat loss. Generally, fat loss is around eating the right amount of calories and being active enough. That's kind of it. And if you do that, or eat less calories than you're currently eating and move a bit more, you will lose body fat. It's that simple, right? But the thing that makes it complex is that we're human, and that's about the beliefs, it's about the emotions, it's the feelings, right? In other
Right.
words, it's the mindset, how we think and
Mindset.
feel about stuff. So I honestly believe if anyone was to ask me or say to me, what's the one biggest thing that will determine whether someone's successful or not? For me, it's not who you surround yourself with, it's not your circumstances, it's not your past, it's not your education, it's none of that. It's mindset. I believe that is the biggest factor.
Yes, I think you're right. And then once you get into that mindset, the next thing is the need to get clarity
Mm.
because you cannot really take action unless you have clarity. Do you have any ideas about how we can help our audience get better clarity?
I think one of the best ways to get clarity is to get help on that. I'm a big believer in, reaching out for support, and it doesn't always necessarily mean paid support, but if you
I
can speak it out rather than just trying to figure things out alone, I think that is a big tip I would give to anybody listening to this right now is, you know, and I would just add to that, clarity sometimes follows confusion. So if you are confused, if you're not clear, if you are uncertain, don't throw in the towel and be frustrated and think, oh, well, that's it. I just don't know the answers. Stick with it. Keep questioning. Ask better questions. What could be the answer? Why don't I know the answers? I think a lot of us just give up too early. If we don't know what we want to be or what we want to do or how we're going to get there, we just go, well, I just don't know. And then we just leave it there. So I would say sit with that, challenge it, question it, and get support and speak it out with other people. And that can help gain clarity.
I really like the idea of getting support. I think a lot, sometimes people get caught in how am I going to do this rather than looking at who can help me.
Yes, that right. I remember. So on my podcast now, I've interviewed over 250 people on the subject of success, and I always come back to one person in particular, really successful entrepreneur, and he'd made millions of pounds. And this was me years ago, naively. My first sort of giddy question to him was like, I'm like, wow, you're a multi-millionaire. And I said to him, how does it feel to actually be a self-made multimillionaire? And he corrected me immediately. He went, I'll stop you there. He said, nobody is ever self-made.
Yes,
Ever. He said, there is no such thing as self-made. I think he said words to the effect of, we're not independent, we're interdependent. Human beings work better when we're part of a tribe, when we get support, encouragement, accountability, and when we serve others as well, because that makes us feel great.
right.
So that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, yes, like you're so right. And from then, I've always maintained that to always think, you know, who can help me get there? Who do I need to speak to? Who can support me? Rather than just thinking the how, think the
I,
who.
yes, I totally agree. And I think that once you get those people in place that are mentors, coaches, models that you can use for your life, then it becomes our need to find our own creativity
Mm,
to be able to develop this.
yes. Yeah. Creativity is massive.
Yes. And I think sometimes people get creativity confused with the idea, well, I'm not an artist.
Mm,
But what we're talking about is the creative approach to life, which I think needs to bring in intuition. Because if you only use critical thinking, you only have the information of the past.
yeah. Right.
And
Okay.
intuition allows you to look into the future.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that really helps me with creativity kind of goes against what people expect. So I'm one of the things that I use and I speak and sort of suggest a lot of my clients use is something called time blocking. When we're wanting to achieve goals and we maybe got an ambitious timeline or whatever, I find, and for those who aren't familiar with time blocking, it's basically like having a schedule for your day that you spend 15, 20 minutes planning the night before, is what I
Right?
advise, where you look at the next day and you kind of block in, rather than just having a general to-do list,
Yeah.
you block in the times and go, okay, from for example, 6:30 a.m. till 7 a.m. I'm going to get up, get washed, get ready. Then 7 a.m. till 8 a.m. I'm going to go for a walk, listen to a podcast, reply to emails. So it's goal specific,
Right.
time sensitive. And this is something I just started doing probably over 10 years ago when I just felt like I was always busy and never had enough time. And it changed my life. Now, often when I speak about doing this, sometimes clients will say, yeah, but that doesn't allow time for spontaneity or creativity. And I always say, I believe it's the opposite because the thing that will stifle creativity and spontaneity is overwhelm and stress and procrastination. And what
Absolutely.
time blocking allows us to do is just be specific. And it's almost like if you do it the night before, it's like you wake up and you just go, right, this is the plan for the day, focus. And it allows you in any, like, for example, now I've got it blocked in that we're here for this time. I can just be completely present with you,
Absolutely.
which enables me to be more creative and spontaneous because I'm not thinking of all the other things I need to do. I know I've blocked that in. And to go one further, if some people are like, yeah, but it's still quite rigid to have your whole day blocked in like that. I say to people, well, block in time for spontaneity. Go, Saturday afternoon from 12 till 6 p.m. I've got 6 hours there where I'm just going to write, be spontaneous. And who knows what will come out of that time, right? So for
Yes.
me, it doesn't always sound on the surface like it goes hand in hand with it. But for me, one thing that helps me be present and focused and creative has been that little hack there of time blocking. So I recommend anybody listening, try it. Give that a try.
I do that and I do it through color coordination.
Yes,
Because
and some of my clients do that. I mean, that's way too good for me. I just like to just write it down and it's done. But it's beautiful when you see the different colors. So do you have like different colors that
so
signify
so
different tasks?
blue is client services, red
Great.
is business development, green is personal care, purple is spiritual, orange is social interaction, and brown is miscellaneous actions.
You see, when you describe that in that way, it makes me think I need to do color coding because I can just imagine when you look at it, there's such a variety there, and you can just
Yes.
feel like you're getting so many different important things done, and it's just such a great variety. I love that. It sounds great.
So a high value to me is life balance. I like
Mm,
to be really productive, but I don't want to be busy.
you're right. Okay, big
So at
difference.
the end of every week, I turn my phone on its side and I look at the color patterns
Nice,
and I see how has my life been.
beautiful, and you can have that reflection there, but visually see all
Yes,
the different colors. I
yes,
love it. I think I'm convinced I need to start doing the colors now because I totally get it. Yeah, that's
yeah.
great.
It makes a real kind of like boost, you can say, because an
Mm.
area I tend to be weak in is social.
Yep, me too. Yeah, yeah,
But when
but it's an awareness tool. What you're talking about is when you
right,
see there's not much of that social color, you go, okay, next week we need to
more
fill in that a
social.
little more, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Love it.
Absolutely. The things that we're talking about are really wonderful tools and techniques to bring into life, but habits and rituals and different kinds of pattern are what sustains it. Let's talk about how you sustain your brilliance.
Okay, so for many years I've talked about habits. And I've talked about morning routines and evening routines, and I think they all have the place, but I also think it's bespoke to the individual. So my habits that work for me might be very different to each individual listening. I think it's
Right.
about finding what works for you. For me,
Yes.
generally I like things like journaling, I like exercise, I like to, as best as I can on an evening, have a bit of a ritual where I just switch off from everything and I chill. But it doesn't always work that way. And actually, what I've come to find in more recent, I'm going to say years, but in particular months, for me, one of the key, and you wouldn't call it a habit, but in terms of maintaining energy and focus and passion,
Mhm.
one of the key things is having clear, specific, purpose driven goals because sometimes when I have that, when it's so specific and it's so purposeful and meaningful to me, sometimes I don't have all my habits perfectly in place. Sometimes you referred there to the balance. I don't always have perfect balance. And I speak a lot about progress, not perfection, and reminding everybody no matter how much self development you do or how many times you listen to read the secret or whatever, I always say you're never going to be a perfect human being. You're always going to be human, right? So I do talk a lot about, yes, we want to aim for a level of balance and sustainability. And I'm a big believer in all that. And at the same time, the biggest thing for me that I've found keeps me in the game is when you have those clear, specific, purpose driven goals. And I think a lot of the time when I've struggled to maintain a positive mindset and good energy and be consistent, is when my goals have been a little bit more either not specific or just not purposeful or exciting enough. So, like, for example, right now, I know I'm on week 4 of a 12-week plan coming up to a big launch I'm doing in my business. And my team who are working in my business know we're coming towards the end of week 4 right now. And each week we've got specific goals that we focus on achieving so that we know we're on track with the 12-week plan. Having that kind of time frame where we've got this big exciting launch coming up where we really want to impact loads of people when we do it, it means every week you think, okay, we're on week 2, we're on week 3. Do you see what I mean? It's like that
Yeah.
specific where there's a clear date and a clear sort of strategy, I guess. That keeps me going. And so not every day are my habits perfect, just being really honest. Some days, my nutrition's better than others. Some days I exercise, some days I don't. Some days I journal, some days I don't. I do try and maintain habits that I know help me as best as I can, and they're some of them. But I've also moved away a little bit from a lot of people speak about non-negotiables, and I kind of think that can help people. And I know it has helped me at times, but sometimes it can put an unrealistic pressure for us to tick all these boxes when sometimes just having that one specific exciting goal is enough to fuel us. So I think sometimes it comes back to the clarity you were speaking about, not having clear specific goals. That in itself will usually lend itself to having generally quite good habits and keeping us enthusiastic and being consistent, which we know, as everybody says, consistency is key.
I think you're right. I think one thing that's real important to think about is the fact that we evolve.
Right.
We
Big.
evolve and we change,
Yes.
and there were
So
habits that
true.
I needed to have in place 10 years ago that now no longer apply because I've integrated the results into my life.
Completely agree. I think it's so important to have this kind of conversation because, I'm not about extremes. And I think a lot of times in marketing around personal development or business development, it's kind of like those extreme hooks, like the 5 a.m. clubs and things like that. They make it easier to market to get people involved. But actually, what works for an individual is going to be different from one to the next. And it's going to be different for that person potentially in different seasons of their life, at
Absolutely
different
right.
ages and things like that. So I love that you've sort of picked up on that point. I think it's important to highlight, recognize what works now,
Right.
lean into what works now, and be open to adapt and evolve. And don't feel like, oh, I'm a failure because I used to be doing these good habits and now I'm not. Well, maybe we need to do slightly different habits in this season of your life, and that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're talking now about is sustainability.
Yes.
We found brilliance inside of ourselves. We've cultivated it by getting clarity, by having goals that have purpose and meaning.
Yep.
Now, how do we sustain it?
So I think I talk a lot about seasons. So we spoke there about, like you say, the goals. I'm speaking about 12-week plan, but I know once we've done the launch in 12 weeks, I'm not going to be having like another big goal immediately. There's going to be a bit of time to have more rest and a
Yes,
bit more balance, right? So
right.
sustainability to me, I think starts with making sure you're setting goals in alignment with what lights you up and what excites you and what feels purposeful and meaningful to you. I think it's then about having times when you know you need to work a bit harder and push a bit more, and then having those rewards at the end of those, say, mini goals along the way, so that it's not always go, 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 because that's not sustainable. And I also think it's just about looking at small things you can do each week rather than always thinking about the big stuff. I am a really big believer in those small little actions compounded consistently over time will absolutely add up into some great results if you can stick to them. But I think the reason people often don't stick to the plan is because they expect too much too soon. And I think that's why I'm saying like this launch plan is like 12 weeks. And sometimes I go even longer than that with a launch plan. But people are like, oh my God, 12 weeks till I can actually put something out there and start making money, in business. And I'm like, yeah, minimum. But they're like, but I want to make money now. And it's that mentality, I think, that stops goals being sustainable. When we're coming from a place of lack and need, and I need money and I need to get into shape and lose
Right.
weight now, whenever it's that, it's not sustainable. I always say any win that you get that is a quick win was not a win. Because if you can't sustain it at the end of it, then it wasn't a win. And there's a quote that I love, which is the slow way is the fast way, right? Because again, any quick win you'll realize wasn't a real win. So then you've got to go backwards, like go back to start, go back to go again, and you're back to square one. So actually, just taking the slow route is the fastest route. I didn't used to believe that when I was younger. And I would just say to anyone listening now, if you don't believe that, if you're like, oh no, I haven't got time, like, please take this on board. Whenever, when you see these gurus talking about 6 figures in 6 months, or, again, fitness might talk about how you can get a 6 pack in 6 weeks. Whenever there's those hooks that sound too good to be true, my advice would be go in the opposite direction. Slow,
Yes.
sustainable goals is way better.
We see that in personal growth research. The people that do peak experiences where they go really, really high in consciousness and awareness tend to crash.
Right. Yeah. Because what goes up must come down.
Right. The
Right.
people that make a series of steps in the same direction over the course of time actually have greater growth.
Yes. And, sometimes these boosts of motivation, they can just be a catalyst to kickstart a bit of change. So, again, different things will work at different times, but I absolutely would suggest that what you're saying is the right way to look at it is don't go for the big all in. I think a lot of people do this in the new year, don't they? It's like new year, new me. This is
Right.
the year I'm gonna have the best year of my life. And I love it. I believe it's a Tony Robbins quote, but I actually heard it might be Warren Buffett that said it first. I don't know who actually said it, but I think it's a great quote either way. And the quote is, most people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year, and
Right.
they underestimate what they can achieve in 10. And then
Yes.
again, if I think back to when I was like 18, 19 and first, was quite ambitious, if I heard something like that, like 10 years, you'd be kind of like, oh my God, that is such a long time. I'd be like, I'll be nearly 30. I'll be so old. But then, of course, we realize these years go by pretty quick. So if we can
Right.
learn patience, and if we can take on board that thing of stop overestimating the 12 months and start thinking bigger and just have
Yes.
one solid year of consistent progress, and then duplicate that over year two, over year three, that can add up to one hell of an incredible life.
Yes.
So that for me is some of the gold that we have to remember is patience, and think longer term, not just quick wins and the short term.
Absolutely. You have been very, very helpful to our audience today. If you could sum up all of the things that you know and feel and understand about finding brilliance and living it in the world, what tip would you want our audience to take away from today?
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind really is that life is so short, and really recognizing what a gift life is and how lucky we are to have life. My advice and my main takeaway I'd love people to have is that you owe it to yourself to chase the life you want to live and to pursue the goals that excite you. Never ever don't do that out of fear.
Right.
Fear of failure or fear of judgment or anything like that. And so many of us do. We lose perspective that actually, who cares what people think? We're all just human beings living on this rock with this amazing opportunity to experience life. Please don't let the fear of anything or anybody stop you pursuing your goals, because we're all lucky to be here. We're all worthy. We're all able. We're all capable. Tom Bilyeu said a quote which is about overcoming self doubt, and I love it. He says, "You are a human being designed to get better through effort." And if you just think about that for a moment, we're all lucky that we're a human. And we're lucky that within our DNA, within our design, that if we apply effort to something, we're wired to improve
Hmm.
just through effort. And we all have that ability to apply effort.
Yes.
So I think that would be a key thing. And I just want to add on to that actually, because it's just come to me about if you have low confidence or self-doubt or fear of judgment or any of these kind of things, please recognize that self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, these kind of important attributes do not come from just purely listening, learning, talking, thinking about being confident or having high self-esteem or self-belief. They come as a result of action.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really key thing I'd love to leave the viewers with today is stop waiting to feel confident, stop waiting to feel ready, and recognize that those feelings come at the end of doing it anyway and just taking action. So please put action on a pedestal, make that a priority, chase after your dreams, chase after your goals, take action in alignment with those goals, knowing you might fail. It might be messy action. You might not always have clarity, but the biggest antidote to not having clarity, self esteem, self confidence, self belief is to continue to take action.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for being with us
Thank you.
today. And thank you all for watching. And I hope you watch our videos again tomorrow. I'm Zolita Grant, and this is the Unleash Your Brilliance Summit.